The USAID stuff has just been crazy. USAID, USAID, whatever it is. We've seen this giant audit, more or less. And I use the word audit. Look, that's just a large term. It may be correct, may not be correct, but that's kind of the descriptor I'm going to use there. This audit of USAID by Doge. And we've seen some of the craziness that has been that your tax dollars, well, not K's, but United States citizens' tax dollars have been spent on. And some of these things include $7.9 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language, $20 million for a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan, $1.5 million for art. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Art for inclusion of people with disabilities. We have more. $6 million for tourism in Egypt. Why not? $2.1 million to help the BBC value the diversity of Libyan society. We're just handing out millions of dollars. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. Hey, fucking A, let's go. Why not? Hey, let's go. $16.8 million for a separate inclusion group in Vietnam. $2.5 million to promote inclusion in Vietnam. So almost $20 million for one inclusion for two different inclusion groups over here, which is good. Whatever. This is good. Then we got $1.5 million to promote LGBTQ LGBT advocacy in Jamaica. A lot of LGBT stuff here. $1.1 million to an Armenian LGBT group. $20 million for a group related to a key player in the Russiagate impeachment hoax. $500,000 to solve sectarian violence in Israel. Okay. So a lot of your money has been going to promote a lot of stuff that you guys may not necessarily even know or want it to be going to. But hey, guess what? Always trust daddy government. And if you can't, guess what? They're going to tell you with blatant propaganda. It has been discovered that Reuters, I think it's Reuters. Are you familiar with Reuters first and foremost? Jeff, what do you know about Reuters?
What I think of when I think of news footage, you would see they would usually have the best coverage of something, like without like an opinion piece. It was usually just like, here's footage of a plane crash, and it would say Reuters at the top, and it would usually be with the news sites. That's what I know them for.
Reuters is a very big outlet. They've been around for a long, long time. But it has been discovered that Reuters was paid millions of dollars by the U.S. government for, quote, large-scale social deception. It says this is literally what it says on the purchase order. Now we know why the left is in total panic mode. The laws are literally closing in on massive scams. So I want to take a look at this here real fast, this actual breakdown. This is from USAspending.gov. You can see that the Department of Defense gave Reuters special services right here from 2018 to 2022, $9 million right here, $9 million. Let's see, contract summary over here. It's $9 million. And at the bottom of it, it literally says in the description, active social engineering defense, large scale social deception. This is literally in the purchase order right here to deceive the public. I see you kind of staring blankly at the screen. Your thoughts?
I'm not surprised. It's just kind of seeing the reality of a receipt. That's all. It's just like, holy crap. Because you kind of have to be oblivious or blind to not think a lot of this stuff's going on in general. It's not about conspiracies. It's why are they talking about this stuff, or why are these unimportant things real? And there we go. Now we know. There's a receipt for it. We live in a science fiction book. Seriously. We live in Minority Report or, I would say Blade Runner, but we're not that cool. But we're in this weird place where we know. And this is just a nice validation.
The fact that it was so brazen to put in the description active social engineering defense and large-scale social deception. They have initials for these things. Like, this is a fucking initial down at the bottom. LSD. Like they're down here.
Maybe that's what they were on.
Possibly. Kay, what do you think of all this? Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised at all. And, I think everyone that denied this needs to put $5 in the Alex Jones was right jar, because holy moly, the amount of times And think about all of the friends we lost, just like pointing this stuff out and all these things, getting people heated at us for pointing out the truth that was clear to us. And now there's receipts. Like, I feel physically angry looking at that because it's just like, we've been saying this for years. We've been shouting from the rooftops at how much deception there is. And it's loud and clear now. Now you have your proof. So it's just, and look, I'm a Canadian, so I know that it wasn't necessarily my tax dollars, but dear Lord, Canada also funds like a lot of stupid shit. So I'm
rolls
angry
back
on
to
behalf
the whole
of
world.
America. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
stupid.
literally the entire world. You saw, all this money going to, Afghanistan to teach, about misgendering or whatever. It's like, what the fuck are we even doing? And it really puts in perspective how, I mean, it's either money laundering, a good old boys club or whatever, because we're talking about life-changing amounts of money just being, we'll send you a couple mil, whatever. And I got a couple buddies who I worked with at when I was in the gun industry. They used to do contracts for the government. We were actually talking about this because I don't remember this, Blabs. Man, it was probably 6 months ago. I just kind of joked about like, oh, well, maybe I should get a grant. I should go on the grant.gov or whatever it is and see if there's any grants for podcasting, right? I kind of got a little taste of all this, but the long and short with my buddy, he's like, once you get approval for this grant, it's like a faucet that doesn't shut off, right? And it's very easy to keep that faucet flowing. But once you're in the club, you're good. It's just kind of hard to get in the club. You got to jump through a lot of hoops. It takes several months. You got to fill out 1 million pieces of paperwork. But once you're in, the money just keeps on flowing. And that's very much appears to be the case in this situation. So I don't think anybody is crazy surprised. And actually, let's go over to Joel Heyman, former co-founder, or I guess not former, but co-founder of Rooster Teeth. He said, it was, by the way, super based. Says, so it turns out we didn't have a media. We just had the government funneling money to, quote, journalists and media organizations and told them what to say. Like, is anyone surprised? It wasn't hard to spot. Joel's mega based.
It wasn't hard to spot, but again, like, how many people denied all of this and called us crazy for pointing out that the media was very clearly lying to us? And now we have proof of that.
How many times have you been called a conspiracy theorist?
My whole life.
Right.
My whole freaking life, because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense.
And how many of those former friends that alienated you are going to come back and be like, I'm sorry?
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't care at that point. I've lost friends of like 20 years because they're like, oh, you're just a bigot and a conspiracy theorist for not believing the news. And look at what they report on CNN and all this stuff. How can you feel this way and whatever? And it's like, screw you. Like, use a bit of critical thinking.
People lack that.
What's that? What's that, Jeff?
Oh, I said people lack that.
Oh, yes, they do. Curious, this is a legit question for anybody. Anybody tuning in, watching right now, anybody here on the panel, has anybody had a friend that was one time a friend that called you something, an istophobe, whatever, conspiracy theorist, whatever derogatory term they wanted to throw out, Hitler, Nazi, seen any of the stuff that's coming out, just totally being exposed, and actually reached out to you and been like, yo, I'm sorry? No?
I had one friend that reached out to me about like stuff on vaccines at one point because I was very much like, this seems sus, and I wasn't on board with the vaccine. And that person I knew for like, I would say like close to 20 years. And we were supposed to have like a reunion of sorts. And she told me, you have to stand outside if you're going to come to this reunion. Like, the rest of people, they can be inside and they're vaccinated, they're fine, but you're not vaccinated, so you literally have to stand outside. And I was like, fuck you, I'm never speaking to you again. And
Wow.
They messaged me later to be like, look, maybe I was harsh, maybe you don't have to stand outside, maybe it's fine. And I was like, I'm not showing up to your stupid fucking meeting, I don't care. I'm not hanging out with any of you anymore, fuck you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that would be the closest thing I would have to that, is I was like, no, I'm not like, and ironically enough, they were all the ones that were constantly getting sick and I was fine. So yeah, I think they came around to it, but I was like, I don't fucking care. And these were people that were like my best friends. at one
Yeah.
point.
That's
And I was like,
awful.
screw you. Like, you're really going to come to me and be like, you can't come into my home because you're not vaccinated. I'm like, and it's not like they're dealing, like, oh, we're dealing with elderly or whatever. Like, there was no excuse. It was just like people my age, totally healthy and fine, way more fit than me. And they were like, yeah, no, you can't come into our house because you're not vaccinated. I'm like, okay, fine, bye. Never speaking to you again.
Well, if you just told them, Kay, that you were actually a child, they would have been fine. Your risk for the disease was less than anything. I asked
It's on
if
the
any.
kids menu.
That's right. I want to give you some chicken tenders and some nice tendies and some French fries. I asked that question if anybody had anybody that had ostracized them or had blocked them out of life, and everybody said no except for John Harris. That was the only yes that I saw, that somebody came back and said that they actually got some sort of an apology. So, John, I would actually love to hear about that story a little bit. And yes, you're correct. Like I've said this before, there are people that I literally have taught. I taught this one guy to swim in a pool, and like I knew this guy for years. The irony is that we actually never had a conversation. He just decided to not like me based off of what other people said about me, right? And it was very much like a brainwashing thing. It's like, dude, we literally were friends. Like I never said any, you literally know who I am. I taught you how to swim. It's like if you teach somebody to swim, I'm just saying, it's kind of like a golden rule that you're pretty good buddies. Just throwing it out there. So
Well, it's crazy that you can't like disagree with people anymore either. Like, I don't care if other people decided to make decisions for themselves or if they stand politically different from me. That's your prerogative. Go ahead. But you notice that there's one side of it where they get super aggressive and they're just like, nope, never speaking to you again. And it might not even be that they had a direct conversation with you, anything. They hear something from someone else that mispaints something that you said once upon a time. You're in a different conversation. They read something on social media.
Oh, yeah.
Especially like for you, Craig, like you're more of a public figure. So people will say things about you all the time, right? On the
Oh, yeah.
internet. And so I can't imagine the fact that like you might have friends that read stuff that random people on the internet are saying about you.
Oh, dude,
then they're like deciding they don't want to talk to you anymore when they know you personally.
I had a buddy, a mutual friend, reach out actually via DM. He's like, "Hey, did you hear what this person's saying about you online?" And I'm like, "No," and I don't give a shit, right? I legitimately don't care because I'm confident enough in who I am, and I'm confident enough in what I'm doing. I don't care. And the reality is that all the people who talk about me or say something about me, guess how many of them actually have reached out to me to get my perspective on it or get my thoughts on it? Zero people. So, let them talk. That's just more people talking about what we have going on over here. And I could care less. I legitimately could care less what people think. So